Hey, this is Ben. I was born a Dramblin' man, trying to make a video the best I can. I was lucky enough to get in the beta for Drambo. It's the modular Groovebox app from Beep Street. I know a lot of people on the Audiobus forum are excited for this to be released. Shout out to the Page 200 crew. I'm excited too. I know people are going to make some really cool music and just have a lot of fun with this app. The developer gave me the go-ahead to try making a video, so I'm going to take this time just to give a quick demo of how I'm using it, and then also go over some of the key features. By the way, I don't have a setup for videos, so I'm using my mouse and screen recording. You can sort of see what I'm doing. We'll see how it goes. I am using the standalone version right now, but it does work in AUV3 as an instrument and an audio effect. Okay, so here's what it can sound like. Okay, so this is like, I guess some beat driven, it's an FM patch, kind of fun. Okay, so I've been doing some sound design. I'm not a sound designer by any means, but I've gotten kind of interested. So this is it's kind of like a cello, violin, string patch. Hard to play keys with a mouse, so I'm going to use my hands. You can see the keys light up. Kind of cool. Some sort of ambient, melodic, a little bit more subtle sounds. You know, so I'm playing some patterns. Got a few more. You know, it's really good at handling samples. This is the kind of music that I'd normally be making. I've been experimenting with different stuff in Drambo, but I've been making just sort of standard hip-hop. So you can do just sort of standard analog pads kind of stuff. And I don't know, let's do like one more. So like sort of experimental, sort of sounds more like modular to my ears, sort of stuff you hear out of Eurorack. This is just how I'm using it. Maybe not the best person to be showing off patches, but it's a whole lot of fun. If we want to maybe start from scratch, you can sort of get the lay of the land. So just a quick note, the app is still in beta, so anything you see here is subject to change. I don't think you're going to see any features being removed or taken away, but there might be some new features or improvements made. And then the way you do certain things might change. So it's a modular Groovebox. The Groovebox aspect means you have different tracks. There's nothing on this track. You've got your step sequencer, and you can add patterns. So it's a non-linear pattern-based sequencer. There's no timeline per se. And then the modular aspect means that everything that makes a sound or processes a sound is made up of these individual modules. You've got oscillators, mixers, envelopes, samplers, different sorts of effects, LFOs. There's a ton of them. And you can wire up those modules in a myriad of ways and make really cool and interesting instruments or effects or combinations of those things. So if we wanted to start from scratch, we can build just a simple subtractive synth. To add a module, you just click on the green plus sign, and you're going to see there's a menu comes up. You've got generators, things that make sound, processors, they affect the signal or sound in some way. modulation, and a couple different categories. We're going to add an oscillator for our synthesizer. And pretty soon we're gonna want to add an amp after that, so the sound isn't just running. That's going to be under processor. That's better. So now we have an amp, envelope, VCA. If we tap on the track, it's going to trigger the VCA to open, and you can hear the sound. So if I want to add in maybe a filter, I can add that after. That'd be fine. But if I want to add something in between two modules, you just tap and hold, move it over, and that little green arrow is going to show up, green plus sign. And we can add a filter as a processor. We can open it up a little bit. Cool. So now, if I want to start playing keys, I can click on keys, and you're going to have a full keyboard. It's done very low, all the way up, back to middle C. It's kind of hard to play keyboard with a mouse, so you're going to see the keyboard light up. That's me tapping. If I want to enter in a sequence, you simply tap in on the sequencer, and the note that gets assigned to that step is going to be the last note that you played. So if I want to add some variation, I can take these away. It's a very simple sequence. Let's get rid of that. I can record these in live if I want to. I'm going to tap the record button. It's quantized right now. I'm going to keep it quantized, but you can change the quantization settings. You can also take overdubbing off. Stop recording. Now, if I want to change a step that's already been added without deleting it and then adding in another note, I simply hold down. I can't do this with a mouse. Hold down on the step, you're going to see it light up, and I just tap a different key. Now I can play chords if I want to. It's set to monophonic, but I can play chords. Just tap two notes or more notes. Let's change it to two voices. Cool. So we've got a simple sequence set up. It's really easy to change the sequence if you want to edit it. Now you can also, we've only been working with like single step length notes. You can just click and drag and extend the gate length of the note. So you can get sustain. That would also record if you played a sustained note. It would show up there. Let's go to the step setting, just so you can see what's going on. When you click on any step that has active information in that step, you're going to see step components come up. I'm not going to play around with this right now, but just so you can see, you can set retriggers. You can set sort of like probability or conditional events, step components. So you could have a step that only plays on the first of every 3 loops, or that only plays 30% of the time, or you could set something to be tied to a specific scene, and I'll probably talk about that later. So these are just things you can add to throw in some variety. Now maybe if I might want to modulate some of these sounds. So I'm going to add in another module. I'm going to add an envelope, and this is, I'm intending this to be used to modulate the filter. For any parameter that can be modulated, you're going to know that because it's going to have a little arrow next to it. And you simply click on the parameter, and then it's telling you to add modulator. These symbols down here, these are the module outputs. So you'd select the output from the envelope. And nothing's happening right now. Modulation is set to 0 on the cutoff, but we're just going to open that up. That's a little bit more interesting. Maybe I want to add another oscillator, so I'm going to do that. But we don't hear anything yet. Signal is flowing left to right, and you can sort of tell by color coding where signal's coming from. So I'm looking at the filter. It's green. This signal input is green. It's probably coming from the oscillator. So it's going to light up, and I can see that it is. I can switch it to the other oscillator, but then I won't hear the first one. And then the filter is going into the amp end, and then that's going to the output of the track. So I have to add something to combine these signals. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So there's a whole section for like structure or mixers. I have to add both signals. I can control the mix if I want to, but now we're hearing two oscillators. Maybe I want to adjust the pitch of one of these oscillators. There's a pitch module. Now you're going to see both of the pitch inputs for the oscillators just changed. So a lot of the routing is automatic. You don't have to worry about connecting every single module together. You can change any of the connections that are made simply by single clicking or tapping. So I'm going to have one of these oscillators just controlled by the track pitch, and I see that oscillator 2 is set to the pitch module that I added. That's good. So I've got fifths. Kind of cool. So one other thing that you can do while the sequencer's still running, you can only modulate the parameters that have this little arrow next to it. That means you can hook up another module to it and it'll change it. However, you can set parameter locks on any parameter on any module. And those are going to be changes to the parameter just for a specific step. It's a really quick way to add variety to your sequence. So this is another thing I can't do with the mouse. I have to hold down on a step, and then you simply adjust the parameter. And you're going to see when you hold down on that step, if you make a change to any of the parameters, this little gold orange circle pops up, so that lets you know that there's a parameter lock there. And then in the sequencer, you're going to see a little red rectangle next to the green MIDI note, and that means there's a parameter lock. So, things can get a little bit, there's a lot going on, but there is some indication that, here you have a parameter lock, and then you can jump to it and figure out what it is. Now, if I click Edit, and I click on a step, now it's going to show me here are the parameters that are P-locked, and I can make changes to it. That's kind of cool. Go back. Now, if I wanted to remove modulation, let's add an LFO. If I don't want the envelope to affect the filter anymore, let's double-click it and remove. This is also how you would reset the value of something. We can make that filter go back to the default, which is 130. Let's raise it a little bit higher. And then we'll change it with the LFO. So we could have like a slow LFO on most of the steps, but then like really high resonance and frequency on certain steps. And then one other cool thing that you can do, scene locks. So these are going to be sort of like a preset for the rack that you have, or the track going on, all the parameters. And there are 16 of them, I think. It goes all the way up to P. So I'm going to click B, I'm going to make some changes. We're going to raise the cutoff really high. I'm going to lower that LFO. Modulation, up the frequency just a little bit. We're going to bump this up in pitch. So I've set those locks. We're still on A, so you can't hear any of those parameter changes. But if I grab the fader. All of those changes have been made, and I can do that really quickly. I can actually do it instantaneously if I want to. And so, as it moves up in pitch, it goes out of key. I didn't really think that one through, but you can do that for any parameter. So it's really easy to sort of set up different sounds and parameters, movement within one track that you have. Okay, so maybe we want to check out the sampler. I'm going to move to another track, and I'll just remove that. Oh, that was a rack. I'll show that real quick. So you can save combinations of modules into little presets. They're called racks. They're sort of self-contained right now. I believe in the future you'll be able to combine things that are not already grouped in a rack, and you'll be able to kind of roll those up and save it together. You can save track presets already, so you don't have to know that you're making a preset and build it in a rack, but it works the same way. So let's add the sampler. And first we have to add sounds to the sampler. So we'll go to Edit. This is set up like an instrument sampler, so you can make key and velocity zones. There's 4 zones of velocity. We have a full keyboard here. It's really easy to set up the zones. I like that. You can move the zones around. You can make them shorter or longer, or cover more velocity if you want to. If you don't want the zone there, you just tap it, drag it down. It's nice. You can change the root note. And then you've got different play modes. What I want to do, normally you'd have to add a zone and then add a sample. You can load a whole folder of sounds, and it's going to just break that into different zones. So let's add maybe just the kicks. We'll select the current folder. So now you're going to see there's, 20 some kicks in here probably. And they're already spread out. So it'll be really easy to get a bunch of sounds into one track and play with them. I might want to have drum pads instead of the keyboard here. So I'm going to go to my settings up here and just change it to piano keyboard on pads. These do simulate velocity. And so now I've got pads instead. So I can set up a real quick sequence. I like that one. It's cool. It's not very loud, so what I'm going to do, go to the main page, just make this a little bit less quiet, up the volume on this. So this is what sort of like the top level. You're going to notice the tracks look like modules because they are. If I want to add another track, I can do that. I'm not going to right now, but it opens up just like any other track. You're going to see these are being routed to the master. If you double click, you can send the audio from one track to the audio of another. And then you've got, these are just regular tracks, but they're titled Send 1, Send 2, and then there's Master. And then in probably pretty soon, we're going to see the ability to add tracks within tracks. So you can have track groupings. It's probably going to allow you to make really more complicated patches. Pretty cool. So we've got a little beat going. It's another rack. The sampler is also really good for chopping up samples. So we're going to pause this. We're going to make a zone. Probably doesn't need to be that big. Now I'm going to load sample. Drambo does come with a number of different percussion samples and a couple like preset instruments. I've got my own samples in here. It's really easy to import. files. It just uses the iOS file system, so you have audio share, access to your iCloud, whatever. I'll just, this one's kind of fun. So this is playing in the forward mode, so it's just gonna play from wherever I tell it to play from. Okay, and we'll go to keys. So this is set up like it just transposes the sample across the keyboard. It's fun, it's cool. But then you can also chop samples if we change the mode. We can use slices. So it has a loop mode, which if you had like a sustained period in the sample you wanted, loop ping pong, so back and forth. And then you can also slice based on the velocity that you play in, or the key that you play in, or even random. That might be kind of cool. I don't know what I'm going to do with this sample yet. Gives you a nice view form, pretty big, so you can see what's going on in the sample. And then you can just use the pinch, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out, so you can get a little bit more detail. And then to add a slice, you just tap in. So it's on random, so it doesn't matter which one I tap. I can change it to chromatic, and then got my order. If I want to move a slice, I just tap it and drag it. Easy. If I don't want a slice there, I just tap it on the top to remove it. So I can set up a little pattern right here if I wanted to. I'm not going to right now. But it's really easy to use. There's a lot of uses for it. So I'm going to get rid of this instrument. It doesn't really fit in with the rest of the pattern that I have going on. And maybe we'll do something really simple. There's an FM operator, which is kind of cool. So it's just sine wave, and then, it's got the ratio, feedback, amp, decay, level, detune, whatever. So you can use these together, and then it has an FM input. It's a little bit more like gnarly or whatever. Now you don't have to use just the traditional inputs that would go into that module. There's an input for an FM signal, and it can be anything you want it to be. So we could use noise if we wanted to. Sounds kind of cool. Actually sounds pretty cool. I like that. I'll keep it. And then maybe we want another, this FM, and it can take the, so we've got a chain going on. Kind of like a bass sound. I don't like that little burst going on in my, the first track, so I'm going to go, I think it's here. I'm just going to get rid of that one and double click it. It goes back to normal. That's better. So I'm going to set up a real quick sequence here. I'll just record this one in. Okay. So now I'm going to copy this pattern. I'm going to hold down on pattern 1. Copy, paste, and now if I click on pattern 2, it's going to switch. Move that. And right now you're going to see this, we haven't looked at this, but this is the loop pattern mode. If I turn this off, then you get the pattern chain, and you can move back and forth between the patterns. These are set to 1-bar loops, 4-beat loops. If I double click on it, or single click rather, change it to 8 beats. And now you're going to see, turn looping back on. It's one of 2 bars. So I can go between these. And then I can also zoom out. And I can make this really long. It goes up to 64. I don't need to go quite that big, but maybe we could go a little bit longer. We can say 16. And you get your whole view there. Now, if you have a lot of stuff going on in the song, the project that you're working on, There's a couple different views. We've just been in the like regular track and keypad view. This up here is going to show you, it's almost like it's not the piano roll, but it shows you all your track sequences at once. So I could make changes here if I want to. If I want to go back and forth between tracks on this view, if I hit one of them, it's going to trigger that track, and especially if I'm performing, that's going to throw a wrench in my performance. So I can turn trigger off, and now I can go through and edit my sounds, or start building another rack without triggering any new sounds. If I want to mute a track, I can do that. We can mute the drum track down here. I guess we have to mute it down here. Okay. And if we go back to the main, didn't mean to mute it. Don't really know what that was, but it sounded kind of cool. If we go back to the main view, you also have mute and solo here. And you've got pan and you have 2 sends and all that sort of stuff too. Yeah, it's really cool. So I could keep copying my pattern and making changes to it if I wanted to. So I think that's enough for one video. It does so many other things. Drambo does. So I didn't even talk about you can generate MIDI CC and send it to other apps or hardware. You can modulate parameters in here with CC. There are sequencers that are modules. There's you can do stuff with time that I haven't really experimented with, but there's just way too much to cover in one video. I didn't even really scratch the surface. Just wanted to give you sort of a bird's eye view of what's going on here. Anyways, I think it'll be coming out pretty soon. Drambo from Beep Street. I know you all are going to have a really fun time with this app. Thanks for watching.